Hey, what's going on everybody? How are you people doing? Here back again with another World Cup prediction video. So this is going to be my updated prediction now that the qualifying has concluded. So anyway, for Group A, we have Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, and the Netherlands. And in my last video, I think I predicted the Netherlands to finish number 1 and Senegal number 2. So I am still going to stick with that prediction and say Netherlands will finish number 1 in the group. And I have Senegal finishing 2nd, Ecuador 3rd, and Qatar 4th. And then for Group B, we have England, Iran, United States, and the Wales. So in my last video, I had England finishing number 1 in the group and the US number 2. And obviously, despite England getting off to a very rough start in the UEFA Nations League tournament, I still think England will find a way to finish number 1 because I think that's what's going to determine Gareth Southgate's job. Is that if England can perform very well at the World Cup, then I think Southgate is going to stay. But say that England do poorly, then I think Southgate is going to get sacked. So I have England finishing number 1 and the US number 2. As for number 3, I'm going to go with Wales and Iran number 4. And for Group C, I have Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Poland. So obviously for number 1 here, I'm going to go with Argentina here. I definitely am convinced Argentina is going to win this group. Let's not kid ourselves here. Argentina, they are more than likely going to win this group. And as for number 2, I think it's going to determine between Mexico and Poland. But if I'm going to choose for number 2, I'm going to say Poland here. I think Poland definitely have what it takes to challenge for that number 2 spot in the group along with Mexico. And as for Saudi Arabia, though, I have them finishing 4th still in the group. So yeah, Argentina, I have them finishing number 1, Poland number 2, Mexico number 3, and Saudi Arabia number 4. And then for Group D, we have France, Australia, Denmark, and Tunisia. Now, so far, looking at the UEFA Nations League campaign here, France, they got off to a surprisingly very difficult and a very poor start. So yeah, it is pretty shocking to see France get off to a really bad start in the UEFA Nations League tournament. But once the World Cup arrives here, I am still convinced that France, they will finish number 1. So yeah, I still have France finishing number 1. And as for number 2, I still got Denmark finishing 2nd, Australia 3rd, and Tunisia 4th. And then for Group B, we have Spain, Costa Rica, Germany, and Japan. So for number 1 here, I'm going to say that I think Spain is going to finish number 1 here in this group, if you want to know my honest opinion. And for that 2nd spot here, I think that Costa Rica and Japan can also challenge for that number 2 spot, just because you saw what Japan did at the 2018 World Cup. Japan were absolutely phenomenal at the World Cup, including them almost upsetting Belgium in the knockouts. So yeah, you don't want to underestimate the Japan national team or underestimate Costa Rica. However, in 2018 Costa Rica, they did pretty poorly at the World Cup compared to their 2014 incredible World Cup. But I still think that Costa Rica, they can definitely maybe challenge for that number 2 spot too if they can get lucky. But for my final prediction, I have Spain finishing number 1 and I have Germany finishing 2nd. Now, the reason why I decided to put Spain number 1 here is because, you know, you look at the Spain national team. Currently, we are witnessing the birth of another Spanish golden generation, you know, with Pedri, Gavi, Ansu Fati, and Ferran Torres, to name a few players who I think are going to be very key players for the Spain national team within the next decade. So yeah, that's why I'm going to say number 1 for Spain, and for number 2, I'm going to say Germany here. And as for 3rd, I have Japan finishing 3rd and Costa Rica 4th. And for Group F, we have Belgium, Canada, Morocco, and Croatia. So for number 1 here, I'm obviously going to go with Belgium here just because I still believe Belgium will finish number 1, but for number 2, I'm going to say Croatia. For number 3, I got Morocco finishing 3rd and Canada 4th. But the thing about this group here is that it's going to be interesting to see how Canada can perform. And for Group G, we have Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon. So obviously this group looks very similar to the 2018 World Cup group. Obviously you got Brazil, who are one of the favorites to win the World Cup, and then you have Serbia, a very experienced Swiss national team, and we got Cameroon here, one of the best performers in the Africa Cup of Nations. But if I'm being honest here for my final prediction, I'm going to say Brazil here. I think Brazil definitely are going to finish 1st in the group. I don't see Brazil finishing anything other than 1st in the group. So yeah, that's why I'm going to have to go with Brazil here, number 1 in the group. And as for number 2, I think it's going to be a challenge between Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see who finishes 2nd in the group. But if I'm going to pick based off of performances, I'm going to go with Serbia here. I think Serbia definitely has what it takes to finish 2nd in the group. While they weren't really good in 2018, I think now Serbia's football team is definitely better compared to their 2018 World Cup squad, especially with the emergence of Vlahovic, who is basically going to add more firepower to Serbia's front attack that already has Kostic, Tadic, Mitrovic, Luka Jovic, Milankovic, Savic, to name a few key players for the Serbia national team. And that's why I'm going to say Serbia number 2. Switzerland, I have them finishing 3rd. Despite Switzerland being a very experienced team, they don't have Petkovic on their team anymore, so that could be a challenge for them to get used to playing under the new manager. So yeah, that's why I'm going to say number 3 for Switzerland and Cameroon number 4. And then for Group H, we have Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea. So obviously for number 1, I'm going to go with Portugal here, but for number 2, I think it's going to be a challenge between Ghana and Uruguay for that number 2 spot. And for number 2 here, I'm going to go with Uruguay here just because, you know, you look at Uruguay with the recent emergence of players like Federico Valverde, Darwin Nunez, and those players that I mentioned, I think are going to be a very key part of Uruguay's future. But however, you look at the Ghana national team, man, I think that Ghana, they could definitely do a lot of incredible things in this group, and I think Ghana definitely have a really great chance of also being able to challenge for that number 2 spot. So while Uruguay, they got a crazy squad too, Ghana, on the other hand, you don't want to underestimate them. This could be the same Ghana team as the 2010 World Cup, because with the key players they currently have on their team,